Good morning, Stampers. Welcome to Learning with Friends. I'm Pat Fairless, and happy Thursday. It is Thursday, October 19th, and I'm so glad you're here. If you're new to Learning with Friends and have just found us, each week on a Thursday morning, I try to share either a tip or a trick or a technique, mostly techniques. So if you're new, again, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'll be honest, I've had a bit of a couple stressful weeks with some stuff going on here around the house. I've got some construction projects planned and it's getting close. And so we're scrambling to get last minute things picked out. So I decided today I need to do something that I really like doing and I find relaxing, which is coloring. So we're going to kind of return to basics today and maybe next week too. Today I'm going to be using the watercolor pencils for coloring some images, and I'll combine that with a water painter so you can kind of see my tips and tricks, how I shade, and so on and so forth. So I'm glad you're here. So let's go ahead and flip my camera down and get started. All right, so the stamp set or the bundle I used for this card is called Fluffiest Friends. And this is a sneak peek of an online exclusive that will be available on November the 7th to everybody. But as demonstrators, we can pre-order occasionally. And so I thought these guys were just so cute, all these little animals. Fluffiest Friends, they look like Fluffiest Friends, don't they? So we're going to be coloring this little bear here. So when we're using water, I'm going to use watercolor paper. It is not absolutely necessary, but it is easier to blend and it handles water better. So I prefer to use it. You can use regular cardstock. You'll just have to practice a little bit with how much water you can add. So when we use water, we need to use StazOn ink because it will not bleed with water. Don't use StazOn if you're using your Stampin' Right markers. Or, I take that back, your Stampin' Blends, Stampin' Right markers, you would want to use StazOn. So let's just stamp this little bear here on my watercolor paper. I'm going to push pretty hard. My watercolor paper is a little bit textured. So I want to try to do my best to get a good image. So he's good. Now to clean our stamps when we use StazOn, we need to use something like StazOn Cleaner. To get that off, it will not come off with your regular Stampin' Mist or water because it is impervious to those. So I use this and then I just clean it off either on a paper towel or on my Stampin' Scrub works well. So good as new. All right, so we're going to kind of get that centered very well, but it doesn't matter because this bundle does come with a set of coordinating dies, and all the images on this bundle actually have coordinating dies. This is the stamps, but all of these have coordinating dies, as well as some other dies, which, like there's a beehive here, there's a lot of little leaves, a branch. This is like a little beehive, I would call it, and some balloons. So there are additional dies, but every image, there's some grass, but every image that's on the stamp set does have a coordinating die, which is not always the case. So that's kind of fun. So get my StazOn and my cleaner out of the way. Now I said I'm using watercolor pencils today, and the colors I'm using are Basic Black, Early Espresso, Crushed Curry, Cajun Craze, and Melon Mambo. And then I have a water painter, and the water painter I'm using is the one with the smallest tip. And I'm going to grab a piece of paper towel because we occasionally want to clean our water painter when we change colors to get that out of our brush. So I tend to start with small areas first, like his ears. So you're probably wondering why I had Melon Mambo. I'm just putting a little pink in his ears. Okay, and then I take my water painter, squeeze out just a little bit of water. It tells you here where to push. So you can squeeze that out and just make sure it's not too wet, but a little wet. And you don't have to be real careful with this. You are going to see me wipe my brush occasionally over here because I want to get the pink off. So when I go down here and color my pot, I don't get a pink pot because I want to have a Cajun Craze pot. So let's look. Here's my Cajun Craze. So what I typically do is I just start where the shaded lines are. And I darken those in with my watercolor pencil pretty good. And then I'll also, kind of before you start, think about where the sun is going to be coming from or your light source. And I'm going to say my light source is coming from this direction, which means this side is going to be more in shadow and this side will be lighter, right? So I'm doing this with Cajun Craze. Now I'm going to just lightly, so I did that pretty dark. I pressed fairly hard. And now I'm just going to add, and you do not have to be careful. You can just kind of scribble some color on there. And take your water painter and pull your colors from the dark towards the light. Now, I will say I found that with this watercoloring with a water painter technique, I found that with pencils, sometimes you can go back and sometimes it works well and sometimes not so much, but you can go back and add color, right? But I sort of found it was easier for me to lighten something than to darken it. So if I want it dark, I kind of just left it dark to begin with, because once I got this watercolor paper wet, it didn't really want to pick up color again. Now you can let it dry and then add some more. But again, I'm cleaning in between here. So if I want to leave this spot light, I start with the light and pull towards the color. And it'll bring in a little color. I'm just trying to get rid of the lines, basically, and just do some blending. So there is my pot. Now, I think it could use a little more color. So let's try to add a little more around the edges. And with some colors, I found this works better than others, quite frankly. The Cajun Craze was pretty good. But now I don't want to pull this all over here too much because I want to keep this light. So I'm going to work, in this case, I'm just going to kind of blend this edge, and you can just kind of scribble a little bit with your watercolor painter to blend that edge. I hope you get the idea. And before you go to a light area, clean your brush, because you want to keep that light. So that's why the areas I want to be light, I'm pulling color away from those towards the darker areas. Where I want them to be darker, I pull from the dark towards the light, like a little bit of a shadow maybe here under the top. So I'm pulling color from over here on this side of the pot and adding it over here. Okay, so there's my pot, and I'm going to call that good. Now we're going to squeeze a little bit and clean it out, make sure there's no Cajun Craze left in there. And I'm going to grab my crushed curry and color the honey. Now, I think this part up here is not probably really honey. This part up here is probably really the pot, this edge. if it's honey, then he's got a big mess, right? So I'm gonna just come back here with my watercolor pencil and add that in there. And I'm just using the water painter to kind of smooth out the color. Not a lot of blending going on with what I just did. I just want to smooth it out so you don't see the pencil lines. So now let's go ahead and color our honey. And I'm just going to lightly fill that all in. In here you can see the artist that made the stamp has some shading. So I will make that a little darker. Darken these areas here where they have a couple lines. And you don't have to make sure that your whole image, I got white left, that's fine. While we're blending, we can drag that color into the corner, or we can leave some white spots. Sometimes a few white spots adds a little bit of highlight. And if you see a line you don't like, just add a little water and blend it away. So there's my honey. And now let's go ahead and take care of his nose. Could be a little bit darker, but I'm going to leave a little highlight, but I just want to blacken his nose a little bit. And I want to give him black pads on the bottom of his foot. I don't know what the bottom color of a bear's foot is. Frankly, I hope I never get close enough to one to find out. I could Google the color, I guess, which I often do. And again, to just get rid of any pencil lines. When you're coloring something solid, you don't really have to use your water painter. But now let's color our bear. And for our bear, I've got early espresso. And I don't want him real dark, and early espresso is a fairly dark color. So I'm just going to start by adding color around the edges where we see the artist has put the shading on the image. And I'm going to add some watercolor pencil in those areas. And now that we're on a bigger portion of the image, I recommend that you work kind of in smaller areas. It just makes the blending a little bit easier, I found. So I'm going to smooth this out around my edges. And here I do want color in the bear. So I'm going to start pulling that color in towards the center. You can see it moves pretty easily. And you just keep blending and coloring until you like how the shading is. And then you can go back and do another art. Let's do his leg over here. So I'm going to color where the artist tells me are shadows. That's where I'll add my dark color. And then I'm just going to pull this towards the center and shade it in. Now, if I found a spot that I thought, oh, it's a little too light, you can make sure your brush is super clean, and you can just go back in and you can pick up color. Just make sure you wipe it off after you pick a little bit up. See how I could almost bring his leg back to white right there? So let's go down, look around here on his bottom. And I'm going to add a little bit of color. I'm thinking this is in the shade a little bit from the pot. And you can just see I'm not coloring it solid. I'm just adding some scribbles in there because with my water painter, we're going to smooth that out and blend it. Okay. And again, if I want to make this darker, pull some of this color over this way so I'm not pulling it that way. Pull it from your edges. And let's just go in and color the bottom of his foot a little bit. Now it's tending to pick up the black. You do have to be careful where you change colors because the watercolor pencils, that you can bring that color and move that color around anytime. So sometimes you just need to dab, like I'm doing here, just kind of touch it a little bit, as opposed to brushing over that black. Because if I were to brush over that black, I would put the black on the bottom of his foot. And maybe his foot's supposed to be black. I don't know. Okay, so now I'm going to flip this a little bit, just make it easier for me. Probably a little shadow here under his chin, under his head. So we'll make that a little darker. And then and there's probably a shadow here behind his pop, since I said light's coming from this way. So we're going to add a little more color over there. And then now the sun would probably hit along here and along this area. So I am going to add some color, but keep it very little, right? Hopefully you can see that. And now we'll just blend those scribbles smooth. And more than likely, every image you do, if I were to make another bear, and I'm going to show you a completed card, you'll see that the next one will look a little different because you add more color or less, whatever. I'm going to try to add just a little more. And I want to keep his hand white, but let's blend this up and back around here a little bit. And this little scribble, let's pull some of this color in this direction. And if you feel like you need a little extra water to move things around more, you can always squeeze your water painter. I tend to be quite careful with that because you get too wet, then you got a different issue. So, all right, let's do his head. And I want to keep his face very light. He's gonna have a white face or a gray face. But first I'm gonna go around again, like I did on the others. I'm gonna darken in where I do have some shading from the Stampin' Up! Artist. They know where the shading needs to be. I am not an artist. I do not really know. So let's get some color all over his head. Too much. And we're just going to pull. And I'm pulling, you can see here, over here, I'm pulling from the dark towards the light. I want to keep this a little light, so let me go from the light to the dark. That way I'm not bringing additional color from here. I'm just using what I have. Circles works good to get rid of your lines. And here I want it a little darker, so I'm pulling color again from my shaded area over here, cleaning my brush. And let's just pull that up here. Now I said I wanted to keep his nose kind of white. Well, that's a little bit too white probably. I do have some shading along here. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of color from that, but then mostly wipe it off and just kind of drag this down into his face, so that his face, it's not stark white, but it is have some color. And we can make that look a little bit lighter by adding just a smidge of shading around his nose here. And then just smoothing out the lines. And I'm going to pull that. I think I need a little bit of water. So I'm just going to squeeze a little bit. Don't want to get too much. Okay. So I still have a bit of a line there, which I'm not happy with. So I'm just going to add a little bit more color along that and try to lighten up that line a little bit. Okay, that's pretty good. There's our little bear. Isn't he cute? Now I'll die cut this and add them to my card. And let me show you the card. Here's my finished card. And this paper is from the All About Autumn paper. There are some little bees in the, if you can see those, I'll bring that in closer. Some little bees in the stamp set. So I stamped 6 little bees around there and embossed those with gold embossing powder. And then I just popped him up on dimensionals. The little beehive over here, I used it for my sentiment. This stamp set does not come with sentiments, so I found one in another set that I have. What my tutorial here? It's from one of these. I think it's from So Sincere, because I use this one is from another stamp set that will be available. That was available to demonstrators, called Be Mine. So this came from that. And then the Happy Birthday is from Go To Greetings, and the Just For You is from So Sincere. So, and that pretty card, I thought that turned out cute. I just added another little strip here for my envelope and added some more little gold embossed bees. So no naked envelopes. And then I have 2 more cards I'm going to share with you. The next one I used Sweet and Precious, and this one had very, very little watercoloring. I just added a little color here, Pumpkin Pie and Daffodil Delight, and then I gave the baby just a little bit of pumpkin pie. I actually cased a card from the current catalog that this came from. I changed up this designer paper. I did figure out that penguins like to eat fish, so I thought these guys looked hungry, so I would give them some fish on their card so they can have a snack. And then the last card I made with this type of watercoloring with the water pencils and the water painter, watercolor pencils, I used In the Moment, and I used this stamp set up here with the lady looking out the window. I've had a lot of fun with this set. If you like to color, this is a great set. And here's my finished card. I also used a background from All About Autumn designer paper. This paper is absolutely gorgeous. And so I thought it would be fun if she was looking out at the colors of fall. And so I just colored in little dots of real red, Daffodil Delight, and Pumpkin Pie, I think. And then I just kind of used my water painter and blended them together a bit. So that was card number 3. So I hope you like those. I hope I gave you some good tips and tricks. Let me bring back my camera over here. And I hope you learned a little bit of something about watercoloring with pencils. It's very, very easy way to watercolor. I don't use them a lot because I tend to forget about them. So that's why I thought I'm going to go back to some basics, and I need to practice with them too. So I had some fun watercoloring and trying to relieve my stress level, deep breaths and color. And it's pretty hard to mess up with the watercoloring because you can just move the ink around with your water painter, right? Even if you go out of the lines, just make sure your water painter is clean of any ink, and where you've made your smudge, just go with a little water from your water painter and you can pick up the color. So I hope you like that. I hope you have a great week. I will be back next Thursday with some more watercoloring, I'm pretty sure. And I'm going to use some different, not the pencils. I'll use something else that I don't typically either use. Ever since we came out with our Stampin' Blends, I love coloring with blends. So that's my go-to. I just go to blends. But so I want to try to use a couple other tools because not everybody has blends, right? So have a great day. If you enjoyed this, will you give me a thumbs up? I'd love to have you subscribe. Thank you to the new subscribers over the last week or so. I appreciate you all, and we will see you next week. Have a great one. Bye-bye.